Hey guys, it's me, Miss Norris, and today I have a fun read aloud for you of the story, The Leprechaun's Gold. The Leprechaun's Gold was written in 2004 by Pamela Duncan Edwards and was illustrated by Henry Cole, and it tells a really neat story about a harpist. If you're ready to hear the story, I'm ready to share it with you. Here we go. The Leprechaun's Gold. Long ago, before even your great great grandfather was born, there lived in a small village in Ireland a man known to all as Old Pat. Old Pat was a harpist and a good one at that. Many a wedding was made the merrier by Old Pat's harp. So this story takes place in Ireland, and this is a man named Pat, and he's playing an instrument called the harp. It's a stringed instrument. And he plays and people dance at weddings. In the same village dwelled young Tom. Tom had learned his own harp playing from Pat's teaching. But now Tom thought himself a better harpist than old Pat. He was much given to boasting and bragging and charging the villagers great amounts of silver for his skills. Old Pat was humble and willing to play his music for free for those he knew had not the means to pay. "Ugh, foolish old man," scoffed young Tom. "What's the use of a gift if not to make you rich?" Old Pat replied, "I am rich in friends, and that is enough." So young Tom says, I'm super awesome and amazing, and I think I'm better than my teacher now, and I'm going to charge everybody, and if they can't afford me, they can't afford me. And Pat says, "I'm going to be rich in friends," which is a nice thing to be rich in. It is to be supposed that life would have continued along this way for old Pat and young Tom had they not seen the announcement. Dun, dun, dun! By order of the king, harping contest to choose the finest harpist in Ireland at the royal palace. All may enter. So now there's going to be a contest, and the king is giving it, and you can see there's lots of people that are seeing this sign, but mostly Pat and Tom. And they're maybe going to have the king decide who's the very best. To be known as the best harpist in Ireland would be an honor indeed, said old Pat. Don't waste your time, old man, sneered Tom. It's a young man like myself they'll be wanting. But Pat shook his head and gathered his few meager possessions for the journey. Aha! Thought young Tom. If we travel together, he's sure to offer me a bite of his food. That would save me a penny or two. So Tom basically said, "You should quit, old man." And Pat says, "No, I'm going to go give it a shot." And then he says, "I'm going to get this man to give me his food because he's a nice guy." I don't like this young Tom very much. I don't like it when people are mean to other people. That seems kind of mean. And so it was that on this night the two sat together by their fire of twigs. They were footsore and weary from walking the many miles to the royal palace. As he listened to Pat practicing for the contest, a sudden thought flashed through young Tom's mind. I could lose to this ridiculous old man. So, as old Pat turned his head for a second, the wicked boy quickly snapped a string on Pat's harp and pushed his own spare string deep inside his bag. I'm sorry for your trouble, he said to old Pat, but I have no strings to lend you, for I might need it myself. Old Pat sighed. He had no money to buy a new string, and the harping contest was as good as lost. That Tom, he's a bad guy, but even then, Pat didn't get mad. He just said, that's a bummer. I guess I lost this contest. Then suddenly, through the darkness, came a cry. Help! The two men shivered, for they knew tales of tricks played on poor travelers by villain leprechauns. Surely 'tis little people that's after us, whispered young Tom. But as the voice rose to a wail, old Pat's kindness of heart proved stronger than his fear of leprechaun tricks. We must find out who's in trouble, he cried to Tom. Not I, declared young Tom. I'll have nothing to do with I'll have nothing to do with it. I'll not take risks of missing the contest. And he turned his back to the voice and covered his ears. So Pat started thinking, this doesn't sound like a trick. This sounds like someone really needs help. And Tom says, I don't care if it's not a trick. I don't care if someone's really hurt. I'm not going to mess up this contest. And he covered his ears. Said, I'm not going to help. I'm not going to listen. On shaking legs, old Pat walked toward the sound of the voice. In a clearing, he saw a tiny man with his foot down a rabbit hole. Help me, sir, cried the little man. I took off my shoes to rest my feet, and a rabbit has taken hold of my big toe. Help me! From deep in the burrow came the shrill laugh of the rabbit. Let go, you rogue! The little man yelled down the hole. I'll have you for dinner, you pesky bag of flea-ridden fur! So it is a leprechaun, but it really is a leprechaun in trouble. And you can see that there's that rabbit holding on to his big toe, and he won't let him go. Do you think Pat can help? Do you think Pat thinks this might be a trick, or do you think he knows it's real? I'll soon fix that scoundrel, thought old Pat, and he bent down and barked piercingly as a fox might in the night. The rabbit let out a scream of fright, and out popped the little man's toe. Thank you, cried the leprechaun, for a leprechaun he was. Come, said Pat, trying not to laugh, for a funnier sight he thought he'd never to see. I've not much to offer, but what I have you're welcome to share. So he barks like a fox, scares the rabbit, loosens the leprechaun, and the leprechaun says, thank you. And Pat says, no big whoop. Come and eat food with me. I don't have anything, but you can share it. Old Pat led the leprechaun back to the fire. I see your fellow traveler has up and gone, said the leprechaun. A brave fellow indeed he proved to be. But I thank you kindly for your help. I'd like to repay you. I'll be needing no payment, answered old Pat. He picked up his harp and began to play a soft tune to soothe the little man. So the little leprechaun says, I'd like your friend, he ran off. I'm glad that you're brave enough, and I'd like to repay you. Pat says, hey, you don't need to do anything. That's what people do. You play well, said the leprechaun, but I'm thinking your harp is not in a good way. I have broken strings, answered the old Pat sadly. I'm on my way to the harping contest at the royal palace, but I'll not win now. I have no money to buy a new string. So the leprechaun's like, you're pretty good at this, but something's not right with your harp. And Pat says, "You're right. There is something wrong, but I can't fix it. I don't have any money." "Ah!" declared the leprechaun sharply. "So it's the gold you'll be wanting?" "No, indeed," cried old Pat, mighty alarmed. He knew terrible things happened to those who searched for crocks of leprechaun gold. But yes, I think it's so," answered the leprechaun firmly. So the leprechaun is actually saying, like, "I can help you. I know how to do some magic." And Pat's like, I don't want you to pay me back, because he's heard that that's a trick. Suddenly, old Pat's eyes would not stop from closing. With a sigh, he fell asleep. The leprechaun blew a silvery note on his whistle, and out of the forest came a band of little men, each carrying a bag. "He wants the gold," said the leprechaun as he told the tale of old Pat. "You know what to do." And the little men nodded solemnly as they clicked open their bags. I don't know if this is a trick, but Pat is tired, and the leprechaun has called out all of his leprechaun buddies. And he says, "You know what to do." And they say, "But I don't know what they're going to do. Do you?" You think it's a trick, or do you think it's I guess, a trick or a treat, if you will? We'll find out. When old Pat awakened the next morning, he looked around in fright. The leprechaun was gone. "Whew, it's a lucky escape I've had," cried old Pat as he picked up his harp case and set off to the royal palace. So, we still don't know. All we know is that the leprechauns are gone, and Pat's going to head on down the road to the palace. He's still pretty far. As old Pat reached the courtyard, young Tom took the stage, looking mighty pleased and confident. He began to play a sweet tune, but, as if bewitched, the strings on his harp began to break. One by one, they twanged and twitched and twirled in the air until all lay dangling. Young Tom gazed at his harp in horror, but then he knew. "Leprechauns," he muttered as he hung his head and shuffled from the stage. So Tom was like, "My harp's fine, I'm ready to rock." But his harp had other ideas, and all of the strings broke, as if by magic. And Tom thinks so too. He thought it was the leprechauns. Now it was old Pat's turn. With sadness in his heart, the old man reached for his harp. Then his eyes widened, for there, inside his bag, lay a glittering golden harp. "The leprechaun's gold!" gasped old Pat. He lifted the golden harp and began to play. He played the merriest music ever heard, so wonderful that the wind itself stopped to listen. A wild tune it was, which filled the people's hearts with joy and their lips with laughter. So Tom is kind of freaking out. He's got a nice harp, and his music seems magical. It's making everyone dance and smile and laugh. As the magic seized their feet, the people began to dance. Soon the courtyard was filled with a dancing, singing, laughing crowd. The other harpists knew now that it was Pat's day and danced along with the people. Even young Tom, who had learned a hard lesson, found generosity growing in his heart. When the final note faded away, the king rose from his throne and beckoned to Pat. "Old man," said the king, "the prize is yours. Never have I heard such music. From now on, you will play always for me and my people. You are awarded the title Royal Harpist of Ireland." So you can see the king is very happy. Pat is very happy. Everyone is very happy. From the nearby forest came the tinkling sound of a little leprechaun laughing. The end. Ladies and gentlemen, I really hope you enjoyed the story of the Leprechaun's Gold. If you did, please hit that thumbs up button at the bottom of the page. If you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot to me. If you're not a subscriber yet, come down here and click the subscribe button down at the bottom of the page. And don't forget to click the bell so that you're notified when there's new content. I hope to see you all again real soon. Be kind to one another. Bye-bye.